Hi, Misha here, and thought I would talk about the two Suliban ships in the Eagle Moss collection, and kind of pros and cons of the Suliban in general. Kind of making this the video like I did on the Axanar cargo freighter, just talking about Enterprise as a series, especially Season 1, what it did right and what I feel like it kind of on. Over on the left, we have the Suliban Cell ship. This was issued 3 years ago. It was issued 90 something. And the other Suliban ship that actually we just got recently, a couple of months at any rate, this is the cargo ship or freighter. It's in the 160s. And obviously is a much more interesting design, at least there's more going on with it. The cell ship was a small craft with 1 to 3 people on board. It was warp capable, and it did have particle weapons, and it was, for the most part, all of them seemed to be cloak capable. But the main thing is this was a building component, kind of a space-going Lego, to build larger ships. They could dock together, connect together, forming things like cruisers or salvage ships, or even the giant Helix. Whereas the cargo ship or freighter here is more cruiser size. It's said to be, lengthwise at least, about half of the Enterprise. But then it has these pods sticking out in all directions for more space. I suppose these are small cells in and of themselves, but anyway. And this was mostly seen in Season 2, the episode where they have the future ship and everyone's fighting everyone for the delicious future technology, which was always kind of the Suliban thing. They wanted future help and they wanted to leapfrog. They were basically slightly more articulate Packlids. In the whole time Cold War plot, as I've said in other videos, I liked Enterprise in the sense that I liked the cast and I liked the general premise, and while I'm not a big fan of prequels, at least Star Trek does have a lot of room for prequel fodder. But it came out in 2001, after Star Trek had been constantly on the air, sometimes even multiple series, for a decade and a half. We had 7 years of Next Generation, 7 years of Deep Space Nine, and we're just wrapping up 7 years of Voyager. It's 21 years plus movies. People talk today about franchise fatigue. It's usually just a smokescreen for other stuff, but I really think on the writing department, Star Trek understandably was suffering from franchise fatigue at this point. I really think if they had just waited 2 or 3 or 4 years before the new series, it could have been better. For one thing, technology would have progressed. Think about technology in 2000 versus technology in 2005. In 2000, mobile phones were just phones. Wireless internet really wasn't a thing. 2005, well, you're starting to see early iPods, and smartphones aren't too far off, and Wi-Fi is starting to become a real thing. Likewise, the political situation had pretty much been the same throughout the 90s, Of course, unfortunately, in 2001, there was 9/11, and then all the subsequent upheavals and changes that happened after that. And Star Trek has always kind of fed off and been inspired by political goings-on. So if they just waited a few years, they would have given the series a lot new material to base on. And you can really see this because Season 3, which would have been 2003, Enterprise really takes off and starts to do a lot better. The Suliban as a race was an interesting idea as far as it goes. You know, a species that wasn't willing to just evolve biologically or technologically on their own. They wanted to leapfrog using future tech, and I think it's interesting that it wasn't just technology like their ships they were going to improve. They wanted to improve themselves, you know, better eyesight, better hearing, faster, basically being the $6 million man. And their ships, having modular ships that clink together and link together and stuff was interesting. And having a patron from the future is interesting. But, the overall concepts were there. The individuals themselves, the species themselves, the characters, really were a little flat. And not through fault of the actors. They can only do what they're given. But they didn't have a certain ambience, like a Romulan or a Klingon or even the Borg or Ferengi. And I think if they'd had more time to really dream up and test the race, they could have come up with little quirks and things that made them more interesting. Again, a good potential, but I think it was just rushed. And the ships show this as well. I mean, this is, well, it's a geometric design. And this one that came a year and a half later, it still has kind of that geometry going on, but is more interesting. I will say the Eagle Moss models, they did a good job with what they had to work with. I mean, working with the cell ship is about like working with the Borg cube or the Borg sphere. There's only so much you can do. But they did do a good job with painting. It's actually a good size. A lot of people will complain that it's small, but it's not small. It's just three-directional. It is relatively lightweight, though, with the metal being the center band or support. The top parts, because of all the detail, are polymer. And it just kind of cradles in this little stand. As far as the cargo ship, it's actually pretty much all metal. Some of these pods, the side pods, are plastic, but the top and bottom pods and the center frame are all metal. So it actually has more weight to it, even though it's a little more spindly. And it, too, is a pretty good size, several inches long and a couple inches wide and tall. But unfortunately, the Suliban never became iconic like the other Star Trek races. And this is when they started to minimize them by Season 2, and, you know, they're pretty much an afterthought by Season 4. I think fan favorites ended up being races more like the Andorians, or even the Xindi, because they were more interesting, they were more evolved as species, more memorable. But I don't know, just kind of felt like talking about these. I've had the cell ship for long enough, I just never felt the need to do a video on it, but with the cargo ship, which I find a little more interesting, why not? Again, I think for what they had to work with, Eagle Moss did a perfectly fine job. What do you think? What do you think about the Suliban or the first season of Enterprise? It's just interesting to me that the writing got much more original and had a more fresh feel to it as the series went on. They got the first 2 seasons had so many common cliche Star Trek tropes and things, but season 3 and really season 4 they started to get their own sense about them. And I really like that. I feel like it's definitely one of those series that was literally cut down in its prime. Kind of feel the same way about Stargate Atlantis. I definitely feel like Atlantis had a couple more seasons in it. And I feel like Enterprise, I think if we'd been given a season 5 or 6, they would have been pretty damn good TV. Just seems like things are really starting to gel. And they could have brought back the Suliban and even kind of followed up on that future guy plot, which I think had a lot of potential. That was the most interesting part of the Suliban, and I never really did much with it. Although a mystery is always kind of fun too. I'd say this, I'd be more interested about Future Guy than I would be the origin of the Borg Queen. I just never have found that a particularly interesting topic. It's the Borg. I mean, I never really cared for the Queen. I kind of liked the Borg when they were just more of a collective, but that's just me. Granted, the actress, or actresses really, but really the first one, Alice Krieger, who played her, did a very good job. She also played Jessica in Dune, or at least Children of Dune. But yeah, again, I know this isn't anything really interesting and probably won't get many views, but yeah, felt like doing it. Haven't done many Star Trek videos lately. As always, again, I have to say these on the Star Trek videos especially. I'm blind, so if I didn't get anything on camera, I'll give you the money paid back. How about that? Money back guaranteed deal. Alrighty, folks. Feel free to like, share, and comment if you could. And if you'd like to discuss Enterprise, let's do it below. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.